Welcome again to Cottage Talk. I am Russ Coleman. Joining me right now is Tony Gold, and we have a very special guest. It's Micky Adams, and he's going to be talking about his time with Fulham. Along with that, we'll talk about his thoughts on the club this season under Marco Silva. We actually will discuss the Manchester United match. So we got a lot to talk about with our guest. But before I bring him on, I want to welcome back Tony to the show. Tony, how you doing?
Yeah, very good. Thanks, Ross. How are you?
I am good. Listen, I'm looking forward to talking to Micky. So I know people want to hear Micky more than they want to hear us. So, Micky, thank you so much for joining Tony and myself on Cottage Talk tonight.
Yeah, pleasure, guys. Yeah, nice to see you.
Okay. Well, Micky, let's just get going. And I want to just take us from the beginning of you becoming the manager, player manager, that first season in charge of Fulham. And then I'm going to have Tony chime in because he's got some key moments he wants to talk about. But I just want to get your opening thoughts about that first season when you were in charge.
Well, I think we should talk about maybe the season before. I think.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I joined Fulham on the under Ian Branfoot, who promised me that I would be a player coach, but I've seen lots of older professionals going into football clubs and have that promise made to them by the managers, but spend all their time as a player still. And I really wanted to learn the ropes. And to be fair to Ian, he taught me the ropes well. We were scouting on a nightly basis. Particularly Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday nights. I was in all the meetings. I was certainly in the meetings with the board of directors, which was interesting, I have to say. Bearing in mind that Jimmy Hill was the chairman at the time. So how he set the team up, why he picked certain players, what the training would look like on a daily and a weekly basis. And the type of players that we would need at Fulham. So I wanted to be in the staff room rather than in the dressing room with the players. So I think that was the first thing and the most important thing for me.
Okay. So, Tony, I want to now go to you and take us from that point on.
Yeah, obviously. So, I think that season, Micky, still remains one of my favourite seasons of all time in Fulham, and so for many that were around at that particular time. And obviously, you've alluded to the fact that you were at Southampton at the time, and you were loaned to Stoke, weren't you, at that particular moment? And then, you met Ian, you came on board, and then how did you pick your sort of backroom staff? Because I know Alan Cork became the first team coach. How did you get involved with Alan?
Well, if you remember, he was one of Ian's signings as well as a centre forward. The big thing about Alan was great kid, great centre forward. Fulham fans probably didn't see the best of him, but certainly knew how to score goals and had done on a regular basis for Wimbledon until he joined Fulham. He blamed me. He said I didn't cross the ball when I should. I just thought his legs had gone, to be fair. He was last onto the training ground, first off the training ground. He needed to get down the bookies and to the Green Man in Newell for a few pints before he went home. But he was a great kid, and we had a great camaraderie between us, and I guess he was different to me. I was more serious, more professional, if you like. But the one thing that I knew about Alan was that when you spoke to him, he could tell you all the little things that Wimbledon did, particularly from set pieces for and against. And that stuck with me a little bit. When I got the manager's job, I immediately took Alan on as assistant manager. And I think it was probably one of the best bits of business that I did because, as a manager, you think you know everything and you would like to be a font of all knowledge for everybody, but that's just not possible. And some of the things that Alan was particularly good at was centre forwards and how they played and how they should get into the right positions to score goals. And he knew a little bit about that. But as I said before, set pieces for and against, he was brilliant. You know, when I see all these teams in the Premier League now with set piece coaches, that role would have been ideal for him now. So I took him on board. The rest of the staff were there. You know, we had one physio,
Chris Smith.
Chris Smith, yeah.
Wow.
No kit man. No kit man.
Alan, what was Len Walker's role?
Lenny was assistant manager to Ian, but then became scout. And he did mainly team scouting rather than player individual scouting, because at that time, Tony, I've got to tell you, all the players that I signed for Fulham in that early stage were players that I'd spotted myself and scouted, because I believed that if I had a limited budget, which I did have a limited budget, that I wasn't going to waste my money on signing players through agents, through other people's, telling me that they were good enough. I wanted to see them personally. So I spent a lot of time on the road, a lot of time, sacrificed a lot of family life, but it worked out well in the end for us, you know.
Amazing. And obviously I was going to come on to the fact that the side was built on a lot of free transfers, small fees, a couple of loan signings at that time. But, you talked about going around and looking at it. What was it that you looked for in the team? How did you identify those players that you felt would be required to give you what you wanted on the pitch?
Well, once again, Fulham had a specific way of playing and a specific type of player at that time. And it wasn't naturally suited to the lower leagues. I'd seen the Gillingham side the year before get promoted under Tony Pulis. And if I said they had 8 6-footers in the team, I wasn't lying. They were big, strong, powerful. Set pieces were key, both for and against. And I took that on board. And if you remember, the year before, I think Gillingham came to our ground and clinched promotion at our ground. And I think they had something like 8,000 fans there. And as a player and as a coach, young coach watching that, I wanted a little bit of that. Now, when I got the job, towards the end of that first season where I really needed to get results to keep us in the league, I remember I went to a board meeting after a defeat at the Cottage again, where I think it was something like, it could have been another team, but I'm thinking Rochdale, and they physically out-battled us. We weren't big enough, we couldn't compete. And I went into this board meeting with Jim Hill, who arrived late, as he would do, but the Muddyman family were there, who were fantastic people. And we were doing the retained list. And all the 5'6", 5'7", 5'8" players, Jim Hill wanted to give them a new contract. After coming in and saying, we got out-battled again last night, we're out-physicaled. And I went, no, free transfer. And we went through them. I give about 13 free transfers.
Wow.
It was amazing. And I went very much against the chairman at the time, which was Jimmy.
Wow.
And another thing as well, what you can't describe how Fulham was at that particular time as well. It was a culture of people being safe in their jobs and in their environment and doing very little for it. And it was, very Fulham-esque. If for instance, my first game as manager at the Cottage, after I took over from Ian Branford, I said to the groundsman, can you just keep an eye on the weather for me a little bit, because I need to change the philosophy of this and the style of play. Ian was all about long ball, sticking it into the channels, squeezing up second balls. And I thought, well, if I'm going to do the same, then I'm not going to last very long here. So I said to the groundsman, listen, keep an eye on the pitch and the conditions. If it's dry all week, can you put some water on it for me and roll it so it's nice and flat, so we can get the ball down and play and maybe zip it around a bit quicker. And he went, yeah, of course, mate. Yeah, no problem. And you know what? I turned up on the Saturday morning. I was horrified. He'd verti-drained the pitch. So basically, what he'd done, he'd put as many holes in the pitch as he could. There was turf sticking out and upwards, and it was dry as a bone. And basically, what he was trying to tell me was, I've heard all this before. I do what I want to do. You're not my boss.
Oh,
you know?
Wow.
That stuck with me. That stuck with me. And he was in a group. If you know, I don't know whether you'd know this or not, but he was in a group called Out. And Out had a box. So they used to hire one of the hospitality boxes at the Cottage in the old Riverside stand there.
Yep.
And they called themselves Out, and he was a member of it. And basically, this stems back from the Alan Dix days as manager, where they used to, it was Dix Out. So they used to call themselves Out. It's a true story. It's a true story. And whoever the manager was who came in after Alan Dix, they wanted him out. It didn't matter who he was, they wanted him out. And he was part of this group.
Oh, jeez.
So that tells you the type of people that we had working for us at that time.
Wow.
And God bless Ian Branfoot. He saw this and he took them on. He took them on. You know, and eventually, you know, it turned into the football club that we all know now. But it took a long way to turn it round. And, you know, that story I tell everybody because I went to a pro license course where I do a little presentation on crisis management. Not necessarily about Fulham, but the first one I did, Thierry Henry was on it. And I said, Thierry, you know, you might think that when you get your first job that everybody's on side with you, but I've got to tell you they're not. You know, so don't trust anybody. Just, you know, stick to your philosophies. Make sure you try and do it your way. And you know, the story of the groundsman was the story of Fulham at that time. Too many people, you know, that were working against the football club to get it where it was. And you know, we missed generations of football fans supporting Fulham. You know, I look round now and, you know, I see all the sellouts at the stadium, but it took us, you know, averaging 3,500 fans at Craven Cottage at one time to get there. And that 3,500 fans, God bless them, you know, they've seen a lot of comings and goings at the football club, and I hope they're really enjoying the Premier League because it's not the football club that it was when I was there.
Well, listen, I think what's true to say is that some people would say that season that you had with us was the reason why we are where we are today, right, Micky, because you were, you know, you started it and you put us on that road. And, you know, you talked about your first game that season, which I think was Hereford at home. It was in front of, I think, just over 5,000. We won the game 1-0. And obviously you put out a squad of, you know, you started your team. But I just want, before we go on to sort of the great moments during that season, I just want to talk about some of the players that you had in your squad, some of the characters that you had. And obviously the one that stands out is Simon Morgan, your captain, and someone I assume you're probably still very friendly with today. Just give us an insight into, you know, what he brought to the side and how important he was to everything that you did.
Well, I work for Simon now. Would you believe it? You know, I do some work. I do some work
Wow.
for the Premier League, and he's my boss. Listen, he was the catalyst. He was the one person that I needed. You know, and I think that you talk about the Hereford game. Yeah, we won 1-0. We had an injury crisis at the time. We'd gone to Ireland again, as we did, and I'd probably battered them up the hills of Epsom Downs too much, like I used to do. And I needed Simon Morgan to buy into everything that we were about. He was inspirational, not the best trainer. I'd seen managers come and go. He'd listened to all of them. I know for a fact that he'd been tapped up by Tony Pulis again at Gillingham, and he was in two minds whether he wanted to go or he wanted to stay. And I said to him after a defeat, actually, I think our second game we were up in Hartlepool and we lost. And I went to the back of the bus and sat down with him and said, "Listen, I need you on board, mate. You know, if you come on board and the rest of the boys see that you're buying into what I'm trying to do, then, you know, we've got a chance. And trust in me, Simon. You know, we will have a chance," because I'd signed Carpenter, Freeman, and Watson, all from Gillingham for something. I mean, listen, unheard of. We were spending money at that time. You know, I think the Muddyman family gave me something like 50,000. And we got 3 players in for 50,000, all scouted from Gillingham's reserves. And they came in and hit the ground running. Good players, all of them. But I needed Simon, and I knew if I got Simon on board, then the rest would follow. You know, and like I say, inspirational. Got the boys together. Great for team spirit. You know. They used to have the odd night out that they thought I didn't know about. Of course, I did. Led by him, of course, and Glenn Cockrell, of course, another one. You know, but I really did think that he was the one that I needed. And if I got him settled, then we were okay.
And I was going to come on to, obviously, Glenn Cockrell, because you obviously he was back in, you know, Southampton at that time, is probably where you, and his importance in that side as well. Number one, because he was also a very good footballer, technically very, very good. But you also had a goal scorer, and you know how important a goal scorer is. And Mickey Conroy, as we know, how was he around the dressing room? How was he in terms of his attitude to training and being around the guys?
Well, Mickey had come in with a big reputation under Ian Branfoot, and never really got going under Ian. You know, I feel sorry for Ian in a way, but once again, you know, trying to simplify his game. You know, I see too many centre forwards that really want to, you know, do all their work, either coming short outside the box or making runs down the channels. And I simplified it for him. You know, I want you in the box. We'll get the ball into the box to you. The rest is down to you, you know. And you know, with centre forwards that it's a confidence thing. You know, very much like, I guess, Jimenez for Fulham at this moment in time.
Yep.
It's all about confidence. If they trust in you and they know that, you know, that ball's going to come into the box when the opportunity arises to, then, and they can put the ball away, confidence comes. And you know, it don't come in pill form. You know, it just doesn't for footballers. You've seen that with Manchester City now. You know, I guess with all the wealth that Manchester City have got, if they could give a pill to all their players to regain confidence, then I'm sure they'd get the most expensive pill and the one that would, you know, get them back on song. But it's just not possible. So, and the other thing about Mickey was, and the rest of the squad, they were fit.
Right.
They were fit. You know, I didn't make any bones about it. You know, on a Tuesday, if we didn't have a midweek game, we were up Epsom Downs. We were on the race course running up and down the hills. And I used to say to them, you know, I bet the other teams aren't doing this. I bet they're playing 5-a-side this morning. I'm telling you, they'll be playing 5-a-side this morning. And look at us, we're up and down the hills. No balls, just run up and down the hills and hurt them. But when you go top of the league, or you're in the top 2 like we were, it's easy for me then, because I say, hey, it's working, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, you can moan as much as you want, but hey, look where we are. Look at your wage packets when you've got your bonus in. You know, so it was a simple one for me. Just get them as fit as I could, get them organised, no grey areas, black and white. This is what we do, and leave it to the key individuals. And, you know, Glenn was certainly one of those in terms of didn't play every game. He was my mate, and he is my mate, and one of my best friends. But when he went into that dressing room, he wasn't my mate. He was a teammate of theirs, and anything that happened or was said in there, I didn't get to know about it unless he thought it was, really key. So, and a good player as well for us in that period.
Yeah, absolutely. So we talk about the spine of the team. The spine was obviously very, very strong. And then, included in that was obviously fans' favourite Terry Angus was part of that. One of my favourite players at the time, Danny Callop, who we didn't end up seeing the best of him because of injuries and stuff, but he was I used to love the way he played the game. Darren Freeman, obviously, Nicky Kuzak, Rob Scott, Robbie Herrera, Mark Walton, they all played their part, and the season started to kick on. So I want to come on to the sort of the nitty gritty now of the great moments during that season. And the first one is the 6-0 thrashing of Darlington, when that home game where just after Christmas, I think we were top of the league, we just peaked.
Yeah.
And talk to me about, and I think it was also the game where you brought Paul Parker back to the club.
Yeah, I mean, Paul, God bless him, I brought him back for two reasons. One, I think he's a good player. Done everything in the game, England international, played for Manchester United and won trophies, but had a history with Fulham as well. And I thought that if he could come in on a short-term basis and do the business for us, then fantastic. And he did that first game. Played really, really well. I think we had a midweek game after that at Colchester. Didn't play so particularly well.
It's very cold down there on a Tuesday night.
A great story about him as well was I didn't let the players wear tracksuit bottoms in training or hats because, you don't wear them in games, do you? So, so why should we do it in training?
Yeah.
But that's how I was at the time, very unsympathetic. And one of the first training sessions, Paul Parker jogged out in a woolly hat, gloves, and tracksuit bombs on, and I could see all the lads looking at me. So this is interesting, isn't it? Because, what's the gaffer going to do here? That's Paul Parker that's just jogged onto the pitch.
Yeah.
And I went, Paul, I said, sorry, mate, but have you got any shorts on? And he went, no. I said, well, you're going to have to go back in. You're going to have to go back into the changing room and get some shorts on because, we only train in shorts and, hats and gloves we don't do.
Wow.
And he said, well, Alex Ferguson let me. And I went, with the greatest respect, Paul, I'm not fucking Alex Ferguson. And that was it. He jogged back in and he jogged back out. But what he showed the rest of the players was, I don't care who they are. These are the rules. This is what we abide by. This is what we do. So he had to buy into it. He didn't quite buy into it in the end, but, that Darlington game I thank him for because I thought he was brilliant that day.
Yeah, he was. He really was.
But maybe time was just catching up with him.
Yeah. And then obviously we move on to the famous moment, who put the ball in the Carlisle net. Yeah, that must bring back great memories. And obviously Rodney at the time, he wasn't a regular starter at the time, but obviously he's a player that you liked and he played his part within that squad. Tell us a little bit about that day and what it meant obviously to you and the players and at the time where we were in the league and how important that was. Because I think they were 1-0 up, weren't they, at the time?
Yeah,
as well,
yeah. We went up to Carlisle the day before the game as normal. Long way. It's a long way, I know that. And we went for a walk the next morning as we normally do. And I have to tell you, for some reason, it was freezing that day. It was really cold and, all the guys were trying to keep warm and we had this walk and I hadn't picked the side. I had an idea in my mind how I wanted to play and some of the personnel that were going to play, but I just had this feeling for Rodney, because the one thing about him was he would accept the ball under any circumstances and pass it. And I thought, this is a big game. You know, Carlisle, our supporters are coming up there in numbers. If they beat us, I think they would have gone above us. You know, and we would have perhaps dropped out of the promotion playoffs. But 3 points, if we got them, would all but guarantee it, I think. So I picked him, and we went 1-0 down. Equalised through Mickey Conroy, I believe.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. 3,000 fans behind the goal there. Brilliant. We had great support that day. Fantastic, honestly.
Yeah, it was unreal.
And then, like you say, the song's there, and it's still there. I mean, I'm really, really proud of the fact that the Fulham fans still sing a song about one of my players.
That's
from
great.
That day. You know, that's fantastic. You know, it's like it's one of the biggest compliments that you can ever pay somebody after all these years. And he was such a great kid. You know, very humble, doing a fantastic job at Dungannon Swifts in Northern Ireland now.
Amazing.
You know, so I hope he's not like me. But, you know, and the journey home, wow.
Yeah, that must have been some coach journey back.
Well, I think we had about 3 stops to get more booze on the bus. And the good thing about it was them big away games, or you know, the games where we were 4 or 5 hours on the bus. I used to say to them, if you're gonna lose a game, I'm just gonna put the worst CD on the bus of the worst music you're gonna listen to all the way on. You know, there won't be any films on this bus. But we were great. We showed a lot of character that day, and for me, the thing that stands out is the goal, obviously, but the fans. It was for them. So
you're 1-0 down at half time. I know it's a long time ago, but do you remember what you said to the players at half time when you got them in? And you know, because that's a tough half to come out, as you say. It showed a lot of character. Well,
I thought we were a better team. You know, I still wanted us to get on the ball. I still needed the ball going into the box. You know, if we could just show a little bit more quality in the final third, you know, then I thought that the game was still there for us. And it proved to be the case. You know, I think that they lost confidence. They certainly lost confidence after the first goal. You know, and then we defended stoutly. You know, you talk about people like Terry Angus, and Nick Cusack was brilliant that season, where I had him in a sweeper role, but when we were attacking, people would probably not have seen it, but I used to have him step out into midfield there as well, you know. So, but he had an understanding of doing that, and he did that well at Carlisle. So it was a great day. I really, like you say, Tony, it's one of them games that sticks with you forever. I did nearly 800 games in my professional career, and that's still one of the games that I can look back on fondly.
Incredible, yeah, amazing. So then that takes us on to the game at home against Mansfield, the boring 0-0, but it was the game
away.
Was it away? Sorry, away. Yeah, and you got the point that secured promotion. What were your emotions then once you knew that you'd crossed that line and you'd got where you wanted to be?
Well, obviously we'd had an open day on the Sunday after coming back from Carlisle, where we met the fans again. Everybody's expecting us to go to Mansfield and blow them away. We were tired, and you know, the boys did ever so well really to get a 0-0. But once again, you know, all the pubs around Mansfield Town's ground were full of Fulham fans before the game, and that gave us a little shot in the arm, a little bit of inspiration. Managed to get a 0-0 draw, and that was the first time after that game sat on the bus with Bill Muddyman, who was the owner at the time, who told me that there was a big investor coming into the club at the end of the season, and he would transform Fulham's fortunes, and that was the first inkling that I knew that the Muddyman family were relinquishing their positions as owners of the football club, retaining a share, but there was a multi-millionaire coming in.
Yeah.
I didn't have a clue who it was, but that was it.
Okay.
And then we get on to the final day. It's funny enough, I pulled out a program. The last home game, I think, was the Hull at home. And in your program notes, you wrote a very inspirational little, I don't know if you remember it. It's about, I will exceed, I cannot fail. The only obstacle is doubt. So you always struck me as a very sort of motivational manager, someone that, you know, if I was a player in your dressing room, I'd be listening to you, you know, really intently, like proper motivational. Players must have been like, you know, banging to get out there and play for you and play for the shirt. So you turn up that final game against Cambridge, 4,000 fans travelling away. And I was there. I remember it vividly. The atmosphere was incredible. Tell us about that day and obviously what was on the line, because obviously it was tight with Wigan. They were playing Mansfield at the time, I think, as well. And it was all on goal difference. Now it's very different, obviously, but then it was about goals scored, not goal difference. So, yeah, talk to us about that day and how
well, Tom, listen, I'll just go back quickly, if I can, to the programme notes.
Yeah.
Sure.
When I first started off in management, I wrote all my own programme notes.
Did you?
And it was because I felt that it was a way of the fans getting into my head in terms of what am I thinking, how am I, you know, what it's my way of showing them what I was all about, you know, and what motivated me. If it motivated me, then I'm sure it would get to the players, and certainly the fans could buy into it. Nowadays, I have to tell you, it's more done with press officers who might speak to probably Marco and, you know, what's the key points you want to get over Marco, and then a rough draft and he'll sign it off, I would imagine. I don't know. I might be wrong. But I wanted to do my own programme notes, and I wanted these little quotes. I think I had one, think, doubt and fail. You know, so little antidotes that I used to look up and think, well, I'll use that today. And I did it because I also thought when I was a player, I used to, you know, before a game, listen to what or see what the manager had wrote. And, you know, see what type of mood he was in, gauging his programme notes. So I guess that the players might have read my programme notes. I don't know. Going on to Cambridge, wow. I mean, listen, we had the best goal difference. We lost the league title on goals scored.
I know.
And who brought that ruling?
Who did?
Who did?
Oh.
Our own chairman, Jimmy Hill, that season.
Oh God.
he was on a committee.
Wow.
That's right.
For that one season, said we want to encourage attacking football.
Oh.
So why don't we do who scores the most goals?
Oh.
So that was the one season, and one season only. After that, it got reverted back, where we had the best goal difference and lost it on goals scored.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but
that's crazy, Mickey.
Yeah. So I should have another winner's medal somewhere.
Yeah, you should.
I haven't. But no, won the game. That's all we needed to do.
Yeah.
We had to hope that Wigan would slip up somewhere to win the title, of course, and they didn't. I think they were losing at one stage, but it managed to turn it round. 4,000 fans at Cambridge Stadium again. I mean, our fans were amazing that season.
Yeah.
You know, amazing. Like I said, took my shirt off afterwards.
Yeah.
Wouldn't do it now, Tony. Got to tell you, wouldn't do it now. But you know, I was 34, 35. You know, had a bit of a body then.
And you played a few games that season as well, Mickey, hadn't you? You played like 3 or 4 games, I think.
Mate, I was a disaster. You know, I remember we had an injury to Robbie Herrera in one game. I think we might have played Cardiff at home live on Sky.
That's a 4-1 defeat.
Yeah, and I picked myself. Yeah. And I think Corky substituted me.
Oh man, that's crazy.
So
wow.
yeah, I didn't play many. I mean, I found it very, very difficult. One, trying to keep my fitness levels up. Secondly, doing all the scouting. I mean, you know, I can't tell you amount of times that I left home at 6 o'clock in the morning and got back at 12 midnight and then repeat the next day. But I wanted to do the job right. It was as simple as that. I had this burning desire to do well. And, you know, the stats prove it, that if you don't get your first job right, then, you know, you don't really get a second opportunity. So I needed to get this right. And, you know, we'd done that. We went straight off to Mallorca or somewhere like that. I can't remember where we were. It was a place where there was nobody there anyway, in Spain. And we'd had a few drinks. I fell asleep by the pool, and all of a sudden I was in the pool on my sunbed. Morgan, all of them, they'd thrown me in the pool, but I didn't mind.
Well, look, all that hard work obviously paid off, and then you got the Division 3 Manager of the Year award as well for that season, which was, you know, fully deserved in my book. So then, you know, did you guys, after once it had been secured, obviously, did you have any time out? Did you manage to switch off, or was the euphoria? Did it last? How long did it last for?
Well, I think for a manager, it lasted about a day.
Right.
Wow.
You know, and then the news broke, I think, that Mr. Fayed had took over the football club. Yeah. You know, so now we're talking about a multi-billionaire, I guess, who had no real background in terms of football, but had bought this football club in the second division, not the third division. Came across the pit pre-season in his horse-drawn cart and walked straight past me in the line. Didn't know who I was. So that was a problem straight away for me, I think. But gradually somebody dragged him back and said, "Oh, this is Micky, the manager." Had the press conference. If you remember the press conference, it was bizarre because there was a lot of cameras there, a lot of interest. And one of the first questions was, "Oh, Mr. Fayed, you like football, yeah? Oh, yes. Mr. Fayed, did you play football yourself? Oh, yes. What position did you play, Mr. Fayed? Oh, captain." And I sat there and I thought, oh my, what have we got? Like, you know, it's obviously somebody who doesn't know a great deal about the game, but, you know, and then another thing that we probably crossed, and maybe a lot of people don't know this, is that pre-season, he and his staff, non-footballing staff, wanted to sign a South African goalkeeper called Andre Arenzi.
That's right, yeah.
And luckily for me, he was playing up in Manchester against England for South Africa. So I managed to get my eyes on him. He didn't have a lot to do in that game. And I come back and Mr. Fayed said, "Oh, we're buying him." You know, what could I say? He wanted to buy him. He wanted to pay the money. So basically, we signed him. And that's really the first sign that, you know, I was under pressure in terms of he would have an opinion and he would sometimes overrule what I was wanting to do and what I was wanting to say.
Yeah.
So that's what he did. We signed him. Now, whether I picked him or not is another matter, and that's probably further on down the line. We can talk about that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, so the 97-98 season obviously comes. Fayed's the new chairman. He's in. I think some of the players that went that season were John Hampshire, although he didn't really play that much in under you at that point. Michael Myson, who came with a big sort of reputation or whatever at that point, but again, injuries I think ruined his career at that point. Lee Barkus, do you remember Lee Barkus?
Yeah, that was another one of Ian's signings, yeah. Right,
okay. And then obviously Terry Angus obviously went as well at that point. And then out of the new players that came in at the beginning of that season, Aidan Newhouse, Andy Arnott, Neil Smith, Ian McGuckin, Steve Hayward, and obviously the most notable one, Paul Moody.
Paul Moody, yeah.
How involved were you with those players that came in? Were they players that you wanted? Were they players that you identified, or were they players that were sort of thrown on you?
Yeah, I mean, what you got to remember at that time was that I'd been buying players from the corner shop. And I had this policy that I wouldn't sign anybody unless I'd got my eyes on them first. Now, I knew that I knew Paul Moody because I played with him at Southampton. And I think he did become, a decent player for Fulham. I think some of the others were questionable. I think Ian McGuckin had a lot of injury problems. Aidan Newhouse was in and out. He was one that really Alan knew more than me from his Wimbledon days. Midfield, Steve Haywood, we'd seen who was captain of Carlisle. So I thought that was a decent signing for us. And he went to play under Kevin as well. So, he must have thought that he was okay. But I guess the big thing was that every day the new press officer was coming in and we were linked with every player under the sun. And one of the most notable ones were Ian Rush, we got linked with, and it was crazy. But I mean, because, the year before I'd done heads or tails with Danny Cullip for an extra £25 on his wages, and now Mr. Fide was saying, who do you want? Sign them. And I didn't have the profile. I'll be honest now, I didn't have the profile. Mr. Fide told me he wants to get into the Premier League in 5 years.
Yep.
That was the brutal truth. They also, as a sign of goodwill, he presented me with a 5-year contract as well. And when I signed the contract, Mr. Muddyman, who was a director but not the owner now, said to me, "You will be the Alex Ferguson of Fulham. That's how much everybody thinks of you." And then 4 months later, I was gone.
Yeah, that's.
Yes, I was going to say that obviously you win your first game at home against Wrexham. Yeah. And then I think it was 8 games in total, Mickey. And I think your last home game was the 2-0 defeat at against Grimsby.
Yeah.
What happened at that point? Because obviously the fans, I know that I was devastated at the time. And most of the fan base was, I think, at the time as well. And then suddenly, you're not there. I think it was all changed for the Oldham game. And then Ray Wilkins and Kevin Keegan are standing there. Obviously, Alan Cook, I think, stayed on. What was the conversation that was had with you? How did it get to that point?
Well, we talked about the South African goalkeeper. Now, I was very, very loyal to the players, and I was certainly loyal to the players that had done so well for me in the 4th division or 3rd division, sorry. And I wanted to give them the opportunity of playing in the division above because I thought they deserved that. Now, if I found that they weren't going to be good enough, then obviously I would have to, get them out and bring new players in of better quality. Every week leading up to my sacking, there was talk of a new manager coming into the football club. The pressure was unrelenting in terms of press speculation. Arenze I didn't pick because I like Mark Walton, and I didn't think he'd done enough to be out of the team. So Mr. Fayed wasn't happy about that, and I kept getting messages coming down from Harrods saying, "Why is he not playing? I've spent all this money on him." So I felt under pressure that way. Stories in the press about players, as we've said. Stories about managers. Then Kevin Keegan and Ray Wilkins are sat in the stand, a month leading up to me actually leaving and denying that they've got any interest in the football club. They're just coming to watch the games and, taking in games in London. It's convenient for them. But it was pretty obvious to me that, what was going to happen. And me being very naive as well, just got on with the job, didn't force the issue. And then all of a sudden, we got a phone call, or I got a phone call saying that I was to report to the Muddyman's office. And Ian Bramford had got the same call as well. So there was 2 of us. I rang Ian up, I said, you know, what do you think's happening? And he says, well, they're either going to back you or they're going to sack you.
Sack you, yeah.
You know, and so it was pretty obvious what was going to happen. We went into the office and Bill and Andy were there. Bill Muddyman and Andy Muddyman, great people, by the way. Absolutely, there wouldn't be a Fulham Football Club now without those two people. You can't underestimate what they did for the club. And he said, "I'm sorry, but you know the boss, the big man wants you gone." I just signed a 5-year contract. They honoured it, and I have to say, you know, it's not one of those cases where you see managers get the sack and a year later they're still fighting for their money. He paid me up in full, but not once again. They did another thing in the press. You know, Adams walked away with £1 million deal. You know, after they sorted my contract out. I'll tell you now, I wasn't on anything like the figures that they bandied around.
Sure.
But it was sad. It was sad for me. You know, first time it's ever happened to me. I didn't think it was because of results. But he wanted Kevin Keegan. You know, the big boss wanted Kevin Keegan. How can you argue with it? You know, when I look back at it now, it was a great decision. It was a great decision. You know, because I hadn't got the name and I hadn't got the reputation still at that stage to bring the type of players into the football club that it needed to project it through the leagues. And whilst it hurt me, and it did hurt me, and it knocked my confidence badly, I have to tell you, I thought it was a good decision.
And what were the players' responses to that, Mickey? Obviously, because you know, football can change so quickly. Managers come, managers go, you know, whatever. But when you've got a relationship, and I imagine that your relationship at the time with the players was as good as it could be. What were their views on it?
Well, what's interesting is that Kevin Keegan was appointed quite quickly after my departure, and I'd arranged with the players to meet them on a Wednesday night in a pub in Epsom. And Kevin had got to hear about it, so he rang me up, and I had some bizarre conversations with Kevin, because first of all he attacked me for the infrastructure at the club, in terms of no kit man, nobody, no chief scout, scouting structure, everything like that. I said, Kevin, can I just stop you there? You know, 6 months earlier, I was tossing a coin for £25 with Danny Cullip. We couldn't afford a kit man. You know, we couldn't afford a chief scout. You know, so get off your high horse, because, you know, you're talking to the wrong man here. Yeah. You know, and anyway, so he said, "Oh, I hear you're having a farewell drink with the players. Would you mind cancelling it?" I said, "I don't work for you, mate. I'm going to the pub. If the players are there, great. If they're not, no problem." And he banned them. He actually said to them, "You're not allowed to go." But guess what? They were there.
Well, that's great, Mickey. I just want to share this because I just been listening, and thank you, Tony, for really guiding us through the interview. And Mickey, thank you for everything that you said. This is the only thing I want to say, and I actually got a message before we went live, and the gentleman who has messaged me, actually, I'm sharing this. He says, what a true gent. And he's also the one, I told you this before we went live. He's the one that said, Mickey, I know what you're saying, that everything happens because of the decision, but the Fulham revolution begins with you. And that's what my friend Kamal here, I'm going to just share this comment one more time. So I know what you're saying, but we don't get to where we are without you. So thank you for everything you've done.
Listen, I came back to the Cottage last year to pick up an award, and it honestly meant more to me than anything. You know, I was emotional. You know, just to be remembered after all these years. that'd do me. But I've got special memories, and
That's great.
The football club means an awful lot to me. And its
That's great.
supporters.
And they mean a lot. You mean a lot to them. And like I said, I've been asked many times, I mean many times, to track you down and interview you because that's how much you mean to them, Micky. So thank you for sharing your story. Tony, anything else you want to ask Micky before we talk about Fulham season so far?
No,
And
listen,
then
I just appreciate obviously the time and just the memories, Micky, and going back over it because it's brought back some incredible moments, and I hope the people are watching have really sort of just enjoyed remembering and reminiscing because football goes so quickly and times pass, and just to reflect, and it all comes flooding back. I remember those times so well, and it's when for me I have my best memories of Fulham because, as I said to you before we came on, that it was a real togetherness. The players had a real relationship with the fans because obviously we, as I said to you, there was only like 3, 4, 5,000 fans at home games during that time, and if you remember, you could stand behind the goal, so it wasn't all seater, and players would come up and talk to you and sign autographs, and very different to how it is now. But just getting your feelings and your emotions on how things were back then, and just incredible. Thank you, amazing to share them.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, well, coming up next, we're going to talk to Micky about Fulham season so far. I definitely want to get his thoughts on Marco Silva. And then we are going to do a quick preview of the Manchester United match. Okay, Micky, let's get your thoughts. Like you said, you care about the club a great deal. I want to get your thoughts on where Fulham are now, because it's been, I think, a very good season. But Tony and I have been doing this show all season, and I actually think that they've underachieved, which is kind of strange to say. They're sitting 10th, but I think Marco has done a great job. What have you made of this season for Fulham?
I think it's been a good season. I know Fulham fans will be disappointed with maybe some of the home performances.
Yeah.
But I still maintain that 10th, 3 points away from 8th or 7th is probably about where they should be. I see players growing this season. I look at people like Bassi, who I used to watch as a young Leicester City under-21 player.
That's right. That's right.
Before he went to Rangers, and if you'd have told me he'd go on and be a centre half in a Premiership team, top 10 Premiership team, I would have laughed at you then. But he's maturing. I think he's got a great partnership with Anderson as well, who I think is a good player. I thought he was superb at Crystal Palace, and he's brought that to Fulham. The one player that I've been more than impressed with this season is Iwobi.
Oh, my favorite player, Micky. Talk a little bit about what you see from Alex Iwobi.
Well, he can play in various positions. He influences the game now. When he's on the ball. I used to think that when he was, particularly at Everton, because he was probably a big money signing for them.
Yeah.
And his early time at Fulham, he played too safe. He didn't have the confidence to hit that killer ball or try that shot or cross that ball. But, I see all aspects of his game improving now. And, what I really respect about him is the thing he did for the homeless at Christmas.
That's right.
That speaks volumes of the kid.
Character.
Character and what he's all about. So untypical of a Premier League footballer. And he's bringing that confidence and that maturity onto the pitch now, and I like him. You've got the best left back in the league in Robinson.
Right. Now,
once again, he was always great. Going forward, but there was always problems with the way he defended at times.
Micky, just on that, just to get your expertise opinion on him defensively, he's obviously got some great attributes going forward. But from my personal perspective, I look at the defence as a collective. And even though he's been playing well, as an individual, what areas does he need to improve on defensively? Because we are still conceding a lot of goals as a collective back four. And I'd just like to get your views on what you feel as him as a defender first, before what he gives us in an attacking option.
Well, listen, if you're a left back or a right back, your job is to stop crosses. So if you find that there's too many crosses going into the box, one, you've got to find the source. And generally it's your fullbacks who are not getting tight enough, sitting off people, letting them cross balls either in front of them or getting to the byline and crossing. So probably the one aspect of his game that he really needs to improve on is a little bit more patient with his defending. He tends to dip his foot in occasionally and make it easy for wingers or wide players to get the ball into the box. So if he can be a little bit more patient, not be so gung-ho at diving in. I'm not saying he's diving in, but he's just dipping his toe in. And what wide players want you to do is they want you to make that first reaction. So, just to calm his defending down a little bit more. But I always think that, when I played left back, my job was to stop crosses. My second job then is to get forward and deliver crosses into the opposition's box. And certainly he's doing that. And in fact, he's obviously somebody that the opposition manager, coaches will highlight and say, well, listen, we've got to stop him getting forward. Can we get him going the other way? And he'll give you an opportunity occasionally. So, but he has improved. There's no doubt about it in this last 3 seasons that he's been one of the most improved players at Fulham. And I hate that tag as well, that most improved player. It means you were rubbish the year before. So I never wanted an award.
Did you ever get the tag, Micky?
No, never.
That is so fun. Hey, Micky, as we're talking about the side, I'm just going to tell you, Tony and I, we actually do a player rating show. We rate the players after the matches, and we do post matches. We do a lot of content on the matches before and after the match. There are 2 players I'm really curious your views on. One is Emile Smith-Rowe, because he's the big money signing, and I truly believe this is the player that Fulham want to build their squad around. He's had his moments, but then he's had his moments that really haven't been the greatest. And then you have a player like Andreas Pereira, who's been playing out of position as your number 8, because now you have a good 2 of Lukic and Berga. So I want to get your thoughts on Pereira, and then, of course, on Smith-Rowe, if you don't mind.
Well, listen, if I take Smith-Rowe first of all, I think we've already touched on it before in the case of Mickey Conroy. Everybody expects, because you're a big money signing, that you come in straight away and you hit the straps and you're away. And for me, I don't know at this moment in time whether he's a 10 or he's an 11 or a 7 or an 8. I don't know what his best position is. Was very, very brave last week when he scored his goal.
Yep.
So he's shown that he can get into the box and he can hurt teams when he has the opportunity to. But it's going to take time. I think that however much it grates supporters because, we've spent 50-odd million pound on this player, come on. He needs to get used to the environment.
Totally agree.
Used to his surroundings. His family might have family issues in terms of at Arsenal. He used to take his kids to school. Now he can't do that, and the missus is moaning at him that somebody else has got to do it. Listen, I'm just surmising there, but yeah. He needs a little bit of time. But there's no doubt at all what he's shown in little patches at Fulham what he can do. But you haven't seen the best of him yet. But when he gets settled and he gets in a settled position, I think you'll see the best of him. Another one that Berger, I think, is a good player. Yeah. I think he's underestimated. I think he does work that other players don't really want to do. He sits in front of that back four and gets on it, and doesn't necessarily hit 40, 50-yard killer balls, but he's nice and safe, keeps the ball moving. Pereira's a bit more flamboyant, isn't he?
Yeah.
he's a little bit more flamboyant. You know, he might take that risky pass. He might be the one that gives it away, trying to hit that killer ball. And I guess I think I've read that there's some talk of him maybe moving on because you know, he's not getting the game time, or maybe Marco don't trust him like he does other players.
No, very interesting stuff. Before we talk about the Manchester United match, what are your thoughts about Marco?
I like him, and you know, the thing that I like about him now is that he's not looking to jump ship every 2 minutes. You know, and I say this from experience as well. That, you know, when I was a third division manager, I wanted to be a second division manager, and you know, when I got to the second division, I wanted to be a championship manager, and then I wanted to be a Premier League manager. And sometimes you have to slowly, you know, you've got to take steps. And Marco, where did he go? Watford, Everton. And I really thought that after he'd finished at Everton, that was it. That would be the end of him in England. But he seems now to have settled in West London. I like his style. He is passionate. I've seen that on the sideline.
Very passionate, yeah.
I know from a fact from the referees, because I assess Premier League referees now, and their talk is that he is passionate. He can get a little bit carried away on the sidelines there, and I like that in a manager. I think players want to see that. But he looks to me as though he's settled now, and he don't need to go anywhere else. I think he can fulfill everything that he wants to do in the game at Fulham.
I totally agree, Micky. I'm glad that you shared that. Let's now talk a little bit about the upcoming match. I'm going to do a preview as well, probably tomorrow. But I want to get your view on this match coming up, because it's funny. I know a lot of Manchester United supporters. I'm going to be watching with a coworker that's a Manchester United supporter. And what's interesting is that you're a manager, and I think the luster's off Manchester United. They're not. You got to judge them for who they are now, Micky. That's the way I look at it. I think this is a match that Fulham should win. I know that sounds crazy, but they should win. They have the better team. I'm not talking about the more talented team, the better team going into this match. What is your view of this match?
Well, in terms of results, they're certainly the form team. Manchester United, I don't think you should ever write them off in any game that they ever play, because they've shown on numerous occasions. I know it's been spoken about, you know, the cup final last year where they had no chance against Manchester City. They showed up.
That's
right. They performed. They won the cup. They've done it this year, you know, big games again. They went to Liverpool and drew. Went to Manchester City and won when they were written off.
Yeah, that's true.
You know? So the talent's there. You've got a manager there who's saying that I'm not going to change for anybody. This is the system that I'm going to employ.
That's right.
And whilst I can associate with that, I think it's misguided. And that's
he doesn't have the players to play that way, right, Micky?
Sorry?
Oh, I'm sorry. Everything I'm reading is he doesn't have the players to play the way he wants to play.
No, exactly, yeah. You know, and I think that is part of the problem. You know, he's got full-backs playing as wing-backs, wingers playing as wing-backs. So attacking-wise, they're okay. Defensively, they're all over the shop. He doesn't know his best three in terms of centre-halves. I know a little bit about Harry Maguire because I gave him his debut when I was manager of Sheffield United when he was 17 years old. I've got to tell you, he's not changed physically or pace-wise, but mentally very, very strong, and that's why he was given a chance at 17 at Sheffield United. So Manchester United fans, I'm sorry, it's my fault. Everywhere I go, I have to apologise for Harry. But I like him. He's a great kid.
Oh man!
And he has ability.
Okay.
So he wants to play this system. He'll come. I mean, what's interesting is that, you know, a lot of these managers, these top managers, they change their shape and system to suit certain games, and it keeps the opposition on their toes.
Yep.
But what he does, he picks the same system, and, you know, moves around the players a little bit.
Right.
So I guess Marco knows exactly what he's going to get on Saturday, and he can adjust accordingly. You know,
Right.
so that's the one thing in my mindset where I think he's wrong, in as much that, you know, Marco will have done his work on the training ground the last few days. He'll know where he wants to exploit and how he can do it, because he knows that Manchester United are not going to change their shape. You know, if they came with a back four, then Marco might be in a bit of trouble.
Right. And I'm glad that you said that, Mickey, because as a manager, I like managers that are willing to change to play against the opponent. And the manager now, like you said, is not willing to do that. So Marco will have done all of his prep work and know exactly how to beat this team. That's why I'm feeling confident going into this match, partially because of how they're going to be set up.
He thinks he knows how to beat them.
Right.
What he's got to do is, the players have got to turn up on the day and do it. You know,
Sure.
I get all this, you know, and as I've got more experience, what you realise is it's not about you. It's about the players.
Yeah. You
know, we can do all this stuff, prepping and whatever, but ultimately it's down to players. And, you know, it's a great saying, isn't there, that managers lose games of football, players win them.
That's right. That's right.
So when you lose, it's always it's the manager's fault.
Hey, Tony, do you have anything you want to share about this match?
No, listen, I was interested to hear your thoughts on Pereira, because you know, he divides fans a lot of the time. He's a bit like Marmite. You either love him or you hate him. And I think actually Silva's been a little bit unfair to him this season because of the system that he's set up with. And he obviously wants to keep him in the side because of what he gives you from a technical perspective. But it seems to take a little bit away from his game. And as I said, from my point of view, I think that the reason why we're not slightly higher than we should be is because Marco hasn't sorted out the defensive side of the game, in my mind. But where I watch us, we're still, you know, we've got a little bit of a weak underbelly at times, certainly through the centre, whether it's, you know, the centre halves, or as you rightly said before, Mickey, that the fullbacks are not tucking in and cutting out the crosses. If you were managing now, if you were doing it now, is there anything that you would change in the way that we're set up and what we're doing? Do you see any players that you would not necessarily play or bring in? What would you?
No, not necessarily. I mean, Jimenez looks as though he's getting his confidence back, and we talked about that with Mickey Conroy, Harry Wilson. You know, he's got all these flair players, and you know the problem you've got. It's a bit like me playing with Matthew Letizia when he was at Southampton. Where'd you play him? Because if you're playing wide left, the right back is going to get forward and he's not going to track him. If you're playing wide right, the left back's going to get forward. You know, so where'd you play all these flair players? You know, so I think he's gone for a more solid base, if you like.
Yeah.
And then what I have been impressed with is his substitutions at times. I think Wilson's come on and scored a few goals from the bench. Traore's comes on and always causes a bit of havoc, doesn't he?
Yeah.
You know, so it's not necessarily about how he sets up. And even when I was managing in Leicester City in the Premier League all those years ago, I found that we were well in game 75 minutes of it, but it was the game changers that came on from the bench that really did your head in, because, you know, all these football clubs have got flair players worth millions that they can bring onto the pitch in the last 15, 20 minutes. Yeah. And they seem to be the ones that change the games, you know? So I think he's doing okay. Don't be too harsh on him, lad.
Okay, very good, Mickey. Listen, I want to thank you for joining Tony and myself, and I'm sure all the Fulham supporters watching and listening, whether it's live or when they hear it back, are really going to enjoy this interview. I can't thank you enough for joining us tonight.
Great, guys. Listen, I've really enjoyed it, and makes an old man happy that, you know, I'm still thought of, you know, like I am at Fulham. It, you know, really does make me happy, and I wish Fulham well, as I always do. Always look out for the results. Paul Kenny, GMB. I wanted to mention Paul as well. He did a lot for Fulham Football Club in those bad times.
Okay.
But thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Micky, thank you for everything you've done for Fulham Football Club. Everything.
Cheers,
Never
pal.
be
Thank
forgotten.
you.
Never be forgotten.
Thank you. Cheers, guys. Thank
All
you.
right. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Cottage. A very special episode. And I can't thank again before I sign off Micky Adams, but we are going to wrap this up. For Tony Gold, I'm Russ Goldman, and our very special guest, Micky Adams. Thank you as always for watching and listening to Cottage Talk.